Great question. So for me, I always ask my entrepreneurs, what do you want? And you think, well, that's such a simple question. I want to have a lot of money. I want to have a stack of cash. I want to have a boat. I want to have a yacht. Okay, but what do you want and why do you want it?
Welcome everybody to another week of Funny Business, where we interview other entrepreneurs and see what tidbits for success that we can glean for our lives. Today with me, I have Todd Palmer. Todd, how are you?
I am excellent. Good to see you.
So before we like to dive into the story of what your business is and what we can all learn from it, I always like to know just a little bit more about the people that we interview. So what was your childhood like and where'd you grow up?
So I grew up on a farm in mid-Michigan, real tiny farm. I had 42 kids in my graduating class. Super small. And, it was interesting because I think it was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey. Growing up on a farm, I had to do a lot of different chores and had a lot of responsibilities as a young man. And that, I think, caused me to become very singular minded at times, both good and bad. But also, it required me to be a rugged individualist. And so when I started my company, and I'm doing, AR and AP and all accounting and sales and operations and all that stuff, it goes back to on the farm, well, I have to mow the lawn, I have to take care of the animals, I have to take care of the house, all those different things kind of came into play. So in the town I grew up in, it was so small. We had one grocery store, one stoplight. So my mom would drive me to school some days and I'd fill up my backpack with, gum and candy and fireballs and take them to school, buy them for a nickel, sell them for a quarter. Who doesn't want those margins? And I remember the man coming down on me, AKA the principal, saying, you can't do that. You're taking advantage of kids. And of course, being the little entrepreneur that I was, I'm like, well, they don't have to buy it. It's supply and demand.
So that entrepreneurial spirit has continued from elementary school up till now. So how exactly did you get started?
So, I started my first company when I was, 27 years old. And I originally put together a great business plan. It was, bound and thick and required $140,000. And to kind of create a better context of how investable I was at 27, I was recently divorced, a single dad living in an apartment. So who doesn't want to give that guy $140,000? I can tell you who. Every single bank in Metro Detroit didn't want to give this guy $140,000. So what do? We, as entrepreneurs, what we typically do, we go to one of the 3 Fs, friends, family, or fools. I found one of those to loan me money. And I thought, oh, awesome. I'm going to have a plenty of startup capital. I'm going to have a long runway. I got enough money for 90 days. And on day 72, we turned the corner because I was under a lot of pressure, mostly applied by myself, to make this bad boy work. And so fast forward, okay, I got enough money. We're cranking the business. We're scaling. We're adding offices. We're adding staff. And come up on 2006. So 9 years later, I'm $600,000 in debt. I'm 2 months away from running out of all of my money. The bank had called the note. They were going to take my house. My son and I were going to be homeless because of my choices, because of my decisions. So at the last minute, kind of in a Tom Brady-esque Hail Mary pass mode, I hired a coach. And I finally, for the first time, stopped being that rugged individualist who grew up on a farm in mid-Michigan. And I brought in some help. And we turned that business around. And we got out of debt within, I think it was 8 years. So it took a while. I didn't turn around overnight. And we hockey sticked the business to make the Inc. 5000 6 times in 7 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, well, I've been to the bottom of the valley and near the top of the mountain. And my second book just came out. I'm super excited about that, From Suck to Success. And in that book, I tell those stories so entrepreneurs will know that if you're feeling alone, like I was feeling, most of it was my own choice. An entrepreneur is an entrepreneur at risk. So I tell those stories in the book because when people see that you have the Inc. 5000 6 times next to your name on your LinkedIn profile, they just assume you figured everything out and it was super easy. And, your best friends are Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful. And that's not really the case.
Right. So how did the idea of Suck to Success even come up? And how did you come up with that concept?
Great question. It really came up for basically, I was writing the book for 2 people. I was writing the book for my son, who's now 30, and he's looking to become an entrepreneur. And then the second person I wrote the book for is the 27-year-old me who didn't know the plane he had just jumped out of when he started his business without a parachute as he fell to the ground. I'm like, I wish somebody had told me this wasn't a straight line of success, but a looping line of success. Right. And I wanted people to understand that, yes, as entrepreneurs, we certainly need to understand cash strategy execution. But for me, it's always people. It's always every problem in business for me has always been people. And the first person it starts with is me. So half of the book is designed around the mindset of a successful entrepreneur, starting with the mindset of a failed entrepreneur, which was me back in 2006. And I talk about the value of creating purpose in what we do, having the proper core values. I know that's tried and true. People say, "Oh, I've heard that 100 times," but I actually tell you the stories about how bad it was when I didn't have those, and how I went through to find those, and how I had to do my own ikigai, and how I was blessed enough to meet Simon Sinek when he was young and poor and would work with anybody, and he worked with me to help me figure out my why, and how then I had to create a process to get myself unstuck when I didn't do what I said I was going to do for things that would only benefit me. So all the craziness that goes inside of the mind of an entrepreneur, I wanted to put that in the first half of the book.
So in what ways do you see people getting stuck in business today, and how do you help them get unstuck?
I help them deal with inside out leadership. A lot of my entrepreneurs come to me and say, it's COVID, it's the economy, it's the marketplace, it's the dog ate my homework excuses. The reality is I help an entrepreneur get stuck because I go inside out. Then typically 99 out of 100 times we're stuck because we got ourselves stuck. Only one person got me $600,000 in debt. And it wasn't the governor. It wasn't the president. It wasn't, in Detroit, it wasn't General Motors, Ford, or Chrysler. It was me. Yeah. I got me into that spot. So who's probably the best person to get me out of there? Probably me. Why am I not getting out of there? Because I'm stuck. Because my itty bitty committee's meeting in my head telling me how much I suck. So we deal with that first, because I'm sure there's someone out there, but I've never met an entrepreneur or a parent even who doesn't have a little bit of imposter syndrome, where mine was, I think I have to be all things to all people all the time on all topics. That's impossible. And then the second thing I would tell myself is every time I failed or something in the business failed, I was a failure. So the only definition of success I had is if the business was rocking, I was successful. But if we had a bad day, then I would fall down. It was an elevator of misery. So I had to realize part of my imposter syndrome was to recognize that I need to have more of an intentional mindset. And that's one of the first things my coach worked with me on, was having an intentional mindset about getting out of debt. We tried numerous ways. And I illustrate those in the book, things we've tried that didn't work. But my purpose was to get out of debt. I didn't exactly know how. I did the Stockdale paradox. The brutal reality was I had gotten myself into debt. And somehow this would be the defining moment of my life. I just decided to adopt that. And now here I am on your show talking about the mess that has become my message. And I got an international best-selling book where I tell people all the crazy nonsense that I pulled and how I dug myself out of it.
How do you help people grow their businesses and their personal life? And what best practices can you offer?
Great question. So for me, I always ask my entrepreneurs, what do you want? And you think, well, that's such a simple question. I want to have a lot of money. I want to have a stack of cash. I want to have a boat. I want to have a yacht. Okay, but what do you want and why do you want it? And once we start peeling back those layers, and it's usually anywhere from a 1 to 3 day process to really help them figure out what they want and why they want it. And once we figure that out, they set the goal. So I wanted to be out of debt. We created intention around that of being out of debt. Then we create a strategy around that intention. And then we create executional metrics around that, your KPIs. And we just do that over and over and over again. In some cases, I would do it on a daily basis back in my recruiting business, to the point of where we created this fail forward award for the person who had the most failures each week, not the person who had the most sales each week. Because the person who was failing and iterating, he's like a mad scientist in the lab, trying different things to see what would work. That was so important to our growth. And so I share that with my clients, because inevitably, Ken, they get to a point where they do something that's out of alignment with their goal. And as their coach, I hold them massively accountable by being massively curious about why they did that. I'm almost like, essentially, I'm like a board of directors. I do 30-minute calls with each of my clients once a week. I have a client I just talked to, this is a great example. He says, I am not checking email all weekend. I said, that's awesome. How are you going to announce that? What do you mean, how am I going to announce it? I said, well, your family's complaining that you're too wrapped up in work. How are you going to tell them? And then if you check your email, what's your punishment going to be? So his punishment this week is his kids are going to tickle him. Awesome. What a great punishment. I said, great. So just so you know, I'm going to check in with you Monday morning, even though you're not on my call list for Monday. I'm going to check in with you to see how this went. Okay. Oh, so like you're going to like inspect what, people respect what the boss inspects kind of thing. So you're actually going to hold me accountable. I said, that's what I do. If you don't want me to hold you, then just say you're not going to do it, and that's okay too. And then we go and tell your kids that your emails are important to you, and you're going to ignore them this weekend. When I talk to you next week, and your itty bitty committee is telling you what a crappy parent you are, we can deal with that. He's like, I look forward to talking to you on Monday. Perfect.
Okay, so here's an interesting question, especially coming from your background of having been in that suck and now being in the success. There always seems to be people around us that are doing better than we are, and we can learn so much from them. And we all know that good artists create on their own or they borrow, but great artists steal and then make it their own. So for your business, what have you stolen and how have you made it your own?
Oh, so I have stolen liberally with full endorsement of the person I've stolen from. So I still use a coach. So I coach, give or take 15 entrepreneurs on a weekly basis. I have a coach. His name is Dr. Daniel Friedland. And I steal from him liberally because he's so generous in that he gives it to me. And in our coaching situation, we've worked together now for 7 years. I've had a 7-year coaching relationship with him. Prior to that, my coach, Greg, he and I had a 7-year relationship. So for the last 14 years, I have received a ton of coaching. And in that, I steal from him liberally things such as massive curiosity, how to drill down. And so I was so liberal in my stealing that he wrote the foreword to my book so I could make sure he got full credit. Because I wanted him to know that I love the work we do. I love how you've helped me repair relationships. I love how you helped me grow me as a human being and as an entrepreneur and as a partner and as a parent. I want to give you full credit. And so the first thing, what did I do? I took his process and I renamed it to my process, took pieces out of it that I know entrepreneurs find too complicated, and I call it my E4 process. So totally. The active learning cycle has been around for forever. Everybody puts a little spin on it. So yeah, I've stolen the active learning cycle. I've stolen massive curiosity. I've stolen massive accountability. Itty bitty committee. I think I heard that on an interview with someone else. Like, oh, that's what I have. All those things. What I think is unique about what I do, though, and I would say this to anybody who's an artist, whether it's an artist who's performing music, there's only how many chords on the guitar. It's what we put into it. It's like a chef. It's the love they put into the food they prepare to us to serve us. That's what I do in the book. I tell you all the embarrassing stories. I lead with the worst moment of my life. I have others contribute their stories. Nobody got into my book who said, look at how smart I am. It's more like, look at how challenged I've been and look at how I've worked through it. So I think for me, if you're going to steal something, whatever you steal, if you put your sense of ownership on what you've taken and you pay homage to those you've taken it from, I think it's fine.
So it sounds like there's a lot of things that you've learned over time when it comes to efficiency, especially going from the whole you do everything to now you're focusing on coaching. So how do you achieve efficiency and how do you keep your skills as sharp as possible?
Oh, wow. No one's ever asked me that question. I'm going to actually have to think about that for a minute. So when it comes for me being efficient means for me getting things done. And I found that for me to get everything, I usually have to write it down or I put it in my calendar because nothing feels more embarrassing and nothing fires up my itty bitty committee quicker than missing an appointment, not honoring a commitment, or letting somebody down. From an efficiency standpoint, this is the other thing I've learned is my job as the CEO of my company, or my job as the CEO of my life now is to make sure something gets done. It doesn't mean I have to do it myself. So pivot into the book. I wanted to have an active marketing campaign. So I outsourced 3 of the 5 pieces of that campaign and I kept 2 that I did. So I made sure I got it done. I project managed other talented professionals to get it done. And I own parts of it that I wanted to have my fingerprints all over. That's, when we do a bestseller campaign to get on the, to get a bestseller status, I felt I had to own the project, but I had to make sure other people got it done. But there's no way in heck I was going to be able to figure out every single little step along the way to do. So bringing talented people, I live in a home. I have a lawn. My neighbors in my home association want the lawn mowed. They don't care if I do it.
That's a very good way of looking at that. I've never thought about that before.
Well, and then take it a step further because I hate mowing the lawn from growing up on a farm, kind of bring it all full circle, right?
Oh, yeah.
I remember sitting on the tractor as a kid saying, this is the world's worst job ever. I used to have to mow 6 acres a week. It was awful. It was hideous. And I had a little foam headset on with a cassette tape I put into the Walkman, and the batteries would die halfway through. And I'd just sit there and be bitter and driving my mower. And so one day I'm going to define success as to have someone else mow my lawn. Sitting with a friend of mine. And I was complaining I had to go mow my lawn at my previous home. And he's like, what do you value? What do you bill your time at? And I told him, he's like, you can hire a lawnmower army to do it in an hour. Why don't you go out and hire a kid for $35 an hour, pay him $70 to mow your lawn, and just stop talking about this? Because the value of your time, as well as the value of my energy and my whole process of recalibration and regeneration, is worth more than $70. I'm like, absolutely done. Hired a kid. My job is to make sure the kid shows up. That's it.
But how long did it take you to go from your suck to feeling like you were in your success mode?
It took me until about 3 years ago. For context for your listeners, I think transparency is so important nowadays. If I want to be authentic, transparent, and vulnerable, ATV, I should tell them how old I am. So as we're recording this today, I'm 52 years old. I didn't feel like I had really reached my place of going from success to significance. For me, that's how I define it, until about 3 to 4 years ago. So anybody listening could look back in the archives and say, oh my gosh, so you already had been on the Inc. list. You already paid off all your debt. You achieved, and you didn't feel successful. Well, not to where I feel right now. Now my success is being a coach and a guide of other people's journees. They get to set the rules of the game. I help them navigate the pitfalls of the forest, so to speak. And for anybody who's got kids listening, this might resonate with them. At Christmas, when we're kids, we love getting gifts. When we've got kids and we're parents, we love giving gifts. It's moving from that person in the journey to over the journey that I find actually to be so incredibly satisfying. So I started coaching about 4 years ago, full time. And it's been the absolute love of my life. It's been, for me, feeling going from successful to being significant. And the significance isn't for me, but it's for the legacy I'm able to leave within others. I've helped others achieve more financial success than they've ever been able to. People are working less and enjoying life more. They're building out their teams. They're creating better core values to improve the lives of their staffs. That is incredibly rewarding to me. And I didn't get there until about 4 years ago.
Feels like the message there is just be patient.
I am so bad at being patient. rather than lie to you. Yes. So I read a review that someone put on my book recently, and it was somebody I knew. So I called him up. I said, hey, that was really thoughtful. And he said, just be patient. The tidal wave of opportunity is going to come your way. Now, this friend of mine just got a deal with Netflix for his books. His books are going to be a whole series. He's written 18 of them. So he's kind of a trusted source on what success looks like in the literary field, right? The crazy thing is he's written 18 books in 26 years. So now he goes, I'm telling you, you're way ahead of the curve in what you're doing versus what I do, but you're going to be a success. You're going to get where you want to go. Look, I'm on your show. This is pretty successful for me, and watching him, over 26 years, it's those little steps. And so it is about the journey. Here's what I have learned about the journey. The journey isn't always happy. It should always be satisfying. Again, raising kids isn't always happy. If we do it well enough, hopefully it will be satisfying. But my son's 30, and I'd say I didn't really start being satisfied as a parent until he was about 27.
So obviously you talked about the $600,000 in debt, but what is the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome to date?
So here's what comes to mind initially. Being a single parent and an entrepreneur at the same time was a big challenge. And there were times, and I talk about it in the book, where I dropped the ball. I was more focused on my business than on being a good dad sometimes. The flip of that is now I'm able, my son at one point moved from Michigan to California. He would have moved farther, but he ran into an ocean. So now he lives 15 minutes from me. He's moved back home, and we've worked through some of our challenges. And that's certainly if you look at the dynamic of the book, really it is an archetype or an architecture for life and problem solving in relationships, and problem solving with ourselves as human beings internally, but also externally with our kids and with our executive teams, with our clients, with our employees, with our loved ones. So for me, and I dedicated the book to my son because he rode the roller coaster of misery with me. And sometimes we would be on the roller coaster without a lap belt. So we thought we were falling out at any moment, and there's the earth, and we're going to go splat. So I'm very appreciative of him. First of all, I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, because I want to make sure I honor your audience as well. It is, for me, it was recognizing that for many years I chased the number. I chased the revenue number. I only was going to be a success if I reached a certain number in revenue. So I would take on bad deals. I would take on loss leaders. I would take on where the margins were razor thin. And that's how I partially got into such bad debt. It's a margin business. You got to know your margins. And that's the first thing when I hired my coach back in 2006, he just beat me over the head. It's like margin first. Your margins are always first. So he actually, you talk about paying homage. He wrote a chapter in my book called Margin Magic, because it is about the margin. And what I got so tripped up on was if I fought for the right margin for my business, nobody would like me. People wouldn't hire me. All this white noise in my head. And then we gave price increases. Oh my gosh, it was like I thought the sky was going to be falling. I was like Chicken Little pre. And in the staffing business, if you move pennies or you move nickels, you can actually drop a lot more to the bottom line, which I was just occluded. And so what I did, I guess the third thing I learned is I plugged into his confidence. He goes, trust me, this will work. Trust me, this will work. And he would say, I will not let you fail. It was huge for me when itty bitty committee has 600,000 reasons why I've already been defined as a failure. For an executive of his level, he ran a $600 million company, and he's coaching me. And for him to say, I will not let you fail. Trust me on this. That was huge. And I find with my clients now, when I challenge them, said, trust me, it will work. I've experienced the slings and arrows. I've gone through the gauntlet. I know you'll come out on the other side just fine.
What is it that you like best about what you do?
Oh, so easily. Light bulb moments. When I'm talking to a client and they're struggling and they're in pain and they're uncomfortable, I let them sit and be uncomfortable. I let them sit and be in chaos and crisis in their head. And I ask them generative questions to slowly unpeel what the root cause issue is. Anybody can deal with symptoms. I want to deal with the root cause issue. And when they self-realize and have self-acknowledgement of what the true issue is that is holding them or their company or their family or their marriage or their parenting back, and they get it, dude, I really use the word dude. I mean, that's how excited I get. It's just, it is the absolute most favorite part of my job. Now, I just did a live demo of this in Texas. It only took us 45 minutes to get there. The room was just like this poor guy was suffering. And I just kept going and digging and digging and digging and validating and digging. And when he had it, the room was like, there was like hugs. And it was awesome. But I've seen it take, I've been with a client one time where it took like 3 hours to get him there. So talk about patience. When I am in my moment of my zone of genius, self-described, I'm no genius, but when I'm in that space and they're walking the path of learning and growth, I will be patient as a monk.
I can empathize with that. I also run a Krav Maga gym. And so when my students go from struggling with a technique over and over and over again, then we drill down and then they finally get it for their first time, they get so excited. I'm like, that's the moment that makes everything worth it.
Look at your hands, like that's it. Like it's, and that's for me, you must be a great coach, because if you get joy out of their success, then I would argue you're totally doing it for all the right reasons. It's the coach who says, well, look at how smart I am. Look at how smart my client. Like, no, they did the work, not me. They've done it. Let's celebrate them. And here's what I've seen. I don't know if you've seen this, but oh my God, the enormous gratitude and appreciation they express for us taking that journey with them is just, it's electric sometimes.
So if somebody wants to get a hold of your book or you, who's the ideal person to be reading your book or getting in touch with you?
The ideal person is for the person who's realizing that they're stuck. They're maybe not getting everything out of their business or out of their life they want. A lot of people who've come to me, a lot of my current clients have had coaches beforehand and it didn't work. A lot of their coaches were teaching them a process, which is needed. Love process. Process is always needed. My model is more life by design. It's work-life integration wherever we go. I've got myself, I've got my business, wherever we go, there we are. And that's really where I think I'm able to make the greatest impact for them, is when they realize I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of not getting what I want. I'm sick and tired of working my butt off, not making any progress. There's the person who's saying there's got to be a better way is a great fit for me. Now, the flip of that is they've got to be ready to do the work. I don't do the work for them. I'm not a consultant. I'm a coach. And my model is very intense. I talk to them once a week. I meet them with them for 4 hours and I recorded it to set new goals. And I also make myself available 24/7, 365. You text me, you email me, I will get back to you as quickly as possible, usually within minutes, if not hours, but it's never more than 12 hours. And I got one client on the different time zone. He'll text me like at midnight, my time. I'm like, I happen to be sleeping. That's why I didn't get back to you. And we just had to have that conversation. And I love those moments where they reach out when they're in chaos and crisis, because that's where we get the light bulb moments. That's where they break through. That's the fun for me, as crazy as that may sound. So yeah, I would say anybody who's, gotten value out of our conversation today, Ken, I'd love to hear from them. They can reach out to me, todd@extraordinaryadvisors.com. If they go to my website, I'm happy to give them the first chapter of my book for free, gift to them for listening to your show. And I'm happy to schedule a 30-minute, talk with them. I just talked to somebody the other day who had heard me on a different show. We did a couple calls, and he got so unstuck in our calls. He's like, oh man, I want to hire you. But he then started seeing the engagement as an expense and not an investment. And when I flash back to 2006, I'm $600,000 in debt. I'm going to lose my house. And I spend my last nickels to hire a coach because I knew I needed to invest in myself with the hope and a prayer to save this business and a hope and a prayer to save my home for my son and I. If I'd seen it as an expense, one, I wouldn't have done it. And I probably wouldn't be here today. And two, I would have taken the advice and the counsel in a very different mindset versus this is an investment. I know you're here to help me. You're going to tell me really tough things. You're going to hold up a mirror and I'm not going to like what I see. I understand all that. I want to get better.
That's awesome. Just one more time for the people at home that are listening through audio. What's the website that they should go to, and can you spell it out for them?
Yeah. Extraordinaryadvisors.com, or my book is from suck2success.com. Both will intertwine. And reach out to me, say hi, and I'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. Well, Todd, thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you at home, please like and subscribe and share with your friends to see if they can get a golden nugget out of what Todd's had to share with us today. And we'll see you next week.
Want to learn the tricks of our trade? We have them all laid out in our courses on Harmon Brothers University. This isn't surface level stuff here. This is our entire playbook, all our secrets laid out in full. The same training we give our own employees. You'll find courses on ad buying, writing video scripts to sell your product or service, creating the kind of large production ads we're known for, even making short ads using nothing but your cell phone. If you're looking to use video marketing to take your business to the next level, Harmon Brothers University has the course for you.
Our students have seen incredible growth in their businesses by implementing what they learned in our courses. Take these reviews as living proof.
We've now got multiple campaigns that are in the millions of views and in the multiple millions of dollars in sales. Within a week, we're close to 10 million views, over $1 million in sales, and most impressively, we've covered 100% of the production costs in the first 24 hours of releasing it.
We saw immediate results. Sales went up 10x the first day.
The first video we did is over 30 million views, the most customers that we've ever acquired in a single month. I think we hit about 26,000 new customers.
Go to harmonbrothersuniversity.com to start accelerating your business's growth with video.